recording, and so the meeting is yours, Mayor Hodson, and I'll help you along as we can.
Thanks, Trent. We're getting into this, and everybody's, Zoom is getting a lot more sophisticated in how we're doing this and getting it done. I do have the comment section open on my screen, so if you do have a comment, please, just send a quick hit there to the chat window, and I'll do my best to allow space as we move through the agenda to make sure we're getting everybody that wants an opportunity to speak or make comments to do that. When we do get into the presentation here by Councilor Lewis, I asked that maybe she can do the same thing, just give some space as we're giving through the presentation, but maybe we can hold off on in-depth conversation and whatnot as we move through towards the end of the presentation. So give me 1 second and we'll get, no, guess not. Oh, hang on 1 second, everyone.
Brian, can I ask a quick question? Do you want us to use the raise hand feature when we want to speak? Is that what you want us to do?
Yeah, that would be great, or pop into the comment, just comment that you have something to say.
Okay.
And co-chairs, I will also help monitor that throughout the meeting. All right. Chair Bernard, it looks like Mayor Hodson is occupied at home, so if you want to keep us moving.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still partially on a phone call.
Well,
So what's new?
I don't know. What are we doing tonight? This is my sixth Zoom meeting today. I'm tired.
You have a speech you're supposed to give us tonight, a prepared speech.
Oh, okay.
Well, per our agenda, we start off with the wonderful Pledge of Allegiance. Who wants to take a run at doing that as a big group?
I'll do it.
Here we go.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
Liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Always fun. And then we do a roll call. There's a lot of people on this meeting, and I'm going to recommend that you can see the panelist view there for who is available, but I don't think that any of you can see the attendee list. So what I'm going to recommend is that you take note of this. We're also taking note of this, and I'll just read through the attendee list as part of our, sort of roll call so that everyone's aware of who's in the room. But we have Chris Lyons on deck if we have any legislative questions, Dana Webb from Oregon City, Jamie Huff from Happy Valley, Jamie Stasny from our Transportation Department, Marjorie Stewart from our CPO group, Mark Ottenden from Wilsonville, Councilor Drake from Happy Valley as an alternate, Mike Besner from our DTD group, Commissioner Rachel Lyle-Smith from Oregon City, Ramona Peral from Metro, Shirley Craddock, Councilor Craddock from Metro as well, and Councilor Wilda Parks from Milwaukee. And that's our group.
Thanks, Trent, for doing that. I appreciate it. Yeah, sorry about the interruption. I'm actually still at work, and so I'm at my office at work, and so somebody had to pop in and ask a quick question, so I apologize for that. We'll move into housekeeping then. Need approval of the March 5th, 2020 minutes, and I think we might have a comment or two on that, but we'll get the motion first.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. Is there any comments, additions, changes, questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Russ.
So appreciate the minutes. I have a suggestion to reword, to add a little bit of wording to the discussion on the tolling. You'll see a list of a very short comment about the comments that came from C4. And I think on this tolling issue, it's important. I'm not sure where this ends up in the record in the future, but I just felt it was not, I realize the list is not necessarily all inclusive, but there were a couple things I just felt weren't addressed that well. So my suggestion, if you have that list in front of you, is to take out alternate routes, comma, timing, and replace it with diversion impacts to local communities, comma, inadequate timing for funding a generally shovel-ready I-205 project, comma, and then recommendation to consider in the assessment process a region-wide tolling approach as an alternative. Those were items that we kind of discussed, were touched on, but they're just kind of not reflected in the minutes. And I thought it was important just in that list to at least be a little bit more comprehensive in its coverage. Should I repeat that again, or?
If the group agrees, you can just email it to me.
Okay,
That sounds good.
I don't have any problem with that.
I'll email it to you.
Okay.
I do have a
So-
question, Chair. Did we actually talk about a regional one? Because there is an ongoing regional one currently. So I don't know if we're mixing necessarily apples with oranges, but there already is one, but it's not, well, maybe staff, well, Trent, you know about that, right? We've got 3 efforts on tolling regionally, right? We have the ODOT tolling, we have the ODOT tolling of 205, the ODOT tolling of the Rose Quarter, not the Rose Quarter, but I-5 north of the Rose Quarter. We have the Metro study looking at not tolling, but vehicles VMT. And then we have the city of Portland. So the Metro's calling, and maybe Christine can clarify, but I think Metro's defining their VMT as a part of a regional effort. The others aren't really regional. But we didn't talk about that. Minutes are supposed to be about what we talked about, so.
Well, that's right. And I raised this specific issue because their focus was on just those 2 short segments of I-205 and I-5. And the comments we made from C4 was that a tolling approach just focused on those 2 segments was questioned. And so while they were going through their analysis, they described this years-long process of evaluation. And the request was that they also consider as an alternative an approach that was a region-wide approach to the roadways. We did discuss it. I raised
Okay,
it.
yeah, okay, that's fine. As long as we discussed it, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we've got a change in the notes and whatnot, does the first and second still hold?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So motion's been made and seconded with the added change that Mayor Axelrod will email into Trent. All those in favor, wave your hand in your screen.
Aye.
Trent will collect. All right. Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my big takeaway from this discussion is just a little bit more meat in the minutes, and that'll be my big takeaway here.
Thank you, Trent. All right, next on the agenda is the Get Moving 2020, and presenting we have Metro Council Commissioner Lewis.
Hi, thanks so much for the opportunity. Tyler Frisbee, staff from Metro, is also here and will be steering us through technology and slides, and will also take over on more detail where I leave off. Just wanted to call out that Councilor Craddock is in the audience, and you know, she represents eastern part of Clackamas County that's within Metro, and she and I have been coordinating on a number of the things that I'm going to go over tonight. So with that, Tyler, you want to bring up our slides? Thank you.
Is that right? Is that full screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Looks good to me. Okay. So let's get moving. Next slide. So the frame here is that we are still one region. For the past year and a half, we've worked with community leaders, yourselves, partners, and the public to shape a transformative investment package to get this region moving. And we've built a plan to make it safer and easier to get around our region and get people to where they need to go. It's a plan that prioritizes the outcomes of the people in Greater Portland, what they want, including a transportation system that has safety, reliability, and access to transportation options and economic opportunity through the lens of both racial equity and greenhouse gas emission reduction. So now more than ever, as we are in uncharted territory, it's important to know that our transportation investment measure is also going to be a jobs measure that can put tens of thousands of Oregonians back to work in our region. And it's a measure that will help keep our communities strong in the years ahead. And that's something that we are trying to make sure Council is articulating as we are coming to the last few months of developing this package. We worked hard to make sure that a large number of the projects in this measure are really truly ready to go. And as soon as voters say yes, we're going to get moving. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us in the next 2 months to get this thing referred to voters. And I'm really excited to share with you all tonight. You've been up to date on some of the project by project pieces, but we're going to scope back out to kind of the big picture. So again, next slide, the region's been growing. We know that the Portland area is a special place. People have been moving here, and we enjoy close-knit communities and natural areas and a distinct and vibrant cultural life. The population projections over the past decades, we've seen decade after decade of steady growth, even as the Great Recession didn't really slow the influx of new neighbors. So when we look out for the future, we can still anticipate people coming in. As recently as 2018, Greater Portland saw 2,000 births and arrivals every month. That's a city bus of new faces every day. And as somebody who's about to contribute to that statistic, we're going to keep growing. As the pace ebbs and flows from year to year, the current data center projection is that we're going to add 500,000 more residents in the coming decades. So you can see on the map, the orange bits grow out. There we go. Decades of growth have brought many benefits to our region, including historic increases in property values, thousands of jobs, and a greater economic opportunity. But it's also come with costs, most notably a crisis in affordable housing, encroachment from development on our natural areas, and it's put an incredible pressure on our transportation system. Portland area communities have come together as a region to tackle these challenges through our regional investment strategy. So that's the work that we've done on affordable housing development. That's the work that we've done in natural areas, 2019 renewal of those bonds. And then next month, the region's voters, well, not next month, next 2 weeks, will decide if homeless services is added to what we want to invest in here regionally. So the regional investment strategies crown jewel will be our transportation measure in November, really making sure that we're prioritizing people getting around this region and equity. And with that, Tyler, you want to take it from here?
Yep. Thank you, Councilor Lewis. The Get Moving 2020 measure is a blueprint for the region that will put tens of thousands of people back to work, building a transportation system to serve Greater Portland for decades to come. It was developed with an unprecedented level of public involvement and deep engagement with community leaders and local partners. Our task force has met for over a year, sometimes twice a month, and I want to make sure to acknowledge Chair Bernard, who put many, many hours into that work. And then I know, I didn't see Mayor Knapp in attendance tonight, but I know he's also a C4 member who participated in the task force. The local investment teams, so one for each county, and Clackamas counties was a really vibrant and spirited group. They brought the lived experience of residents in the counties to talk with planners and engineers to make sure that those investments reflected the needs of community members and community businesses. And we heard from over 25,000 online survey comments hours of public testimony, which Chair Bernard sat through, dozens of community workshops and forums, and hundreds of presentations to local businesses and governments. People have been really clear about what they want, and we're going to deliver it with investments to help drive our region's economic recovery and get moving again. Here's how. We're going to put the region back to work so that people can get where they need to go safely and on time. We're going to put the region back to work so that we can all breathe cleaner air and reduce our air pollution and meet our climate change goals. We're going to put the region back to work to make sure that our investments and our recovery benefit everyone in the region, including communities that have long been excluded from the economic prosperity that our region's experienced. And we're going to put the region back to work so that people can get to work without spending extra time stuck in traffic. We're going to put the region back to work to make sure that we're prepared for the next emergency. This is a photo of Burnside Bridge, which is one of the region's critical identified networks in case of an earthquake. And we're going to put the region back to work to make sure that our communities are stronger and more resilient, and that with the hopes of avoiding the displacement and disruption that has followed previous investments. What are we going to build? We're going to get buses out of traffic so that we can carry more people and help them move quickly around the region. We're going to build 25 to 30 miles of new bus lanes and put in 260 new transit priority signals. And we call those transit priority signals, but they're actually whole intersection improvements and modernizations to make sure that we can time our signals, so we can move cars through, so we have the ability to adjust based on changing traffic patterns and help move everyone through those intersections more quickly. We're going to put the region back to work building 11 miles of a brand new MAX line from downtown Portland out to Bridgeport Village. We're going to put the region back to work making our communities safer, avoiding hundreds of deaths and serious injuries on the region's most dangerous roads and streets. That's building 40 to 45 miles of new sidewalks, installing thousands of new streetlights, and building 280 new safe marked crossings. And we're going to put the region back to work making it easier for people and bikes to share the road. And that's building 100 to 140 miles of new bikeways. And finally, we're going to put the region back to work relieving key bottlenecks and preventing future ones with 120 miles of roadway improvements and 60 miles of planning to make sure that we can avoid those congestion and bottlenecks in the future. Where are we going to build these projects? Everywhere. But in particular, the task force focused on 16 corridors around the region that we know struggle particularly with congestion and backups and safety issues. These congestions help connect, key residential areas with growing employment areas to make sure that people can get from where they live to where they work. And they include a whole host of different types of streets, some long city streets like Burnside or Southwest 185th, some old state highways like McLaughlin, TV Highway, and 82nd Avenue, which used to just serve as sort of a parallel to the freeway system, but now serve commuters and people living in those neighborhoods. The hope is that we're connecting working families with growing employment areas and investing in safety, reliability, and transportation options to help make the system work better for everyone now and in the future. Importantly, these investments include hundreds of projects that have been scoped and are ready to be built so that work can begin as soon as funding is available and we can put people back to work. In addition to the focused investment along those 16 corridors, we also have, I think, 9 region-wide programs that will help provide annual funding across the region off those corridors to help realize the needs that we've heard from people. The first set of programs are focused on safety. We want to make sure that that people can get around safely no matter where they live and where they work. This includes programs like Safe Routes to Schools, the Safety Hotspots program, which looks at where data say the most people are being involved in crashes and figuring out how we can invest to make things safer. A dedicated funding to revitalize main streets and our neighborhoods, and a fund to help connect existing trails and bridges around the region. In the past, transportation investments have resulted in displacement uprooting families, businesses, and communities. This measure invests in community-driven anti-displacement programs and affordable housing programs to help keep communities together while we invest in making their transportation system better. This includes an anti-displacement funding program to help communities talk about what they need to stay strong and resilient in the face of those investments, a program to help invest in affordable housing, and another key initiative driven by community involvement to help make transit affordable for youth. The programs also include investments to improve air quality and reduce climate change around the region, and reduce climate change emissions around the region. There's a long plan for a light rail project in this measure that will carry the equivalent of an extra lane of I-5 traffic in rush hour. But it's also the investments in the bus system that to help us get ready for the bus system of tomorrow that will define the measure, both in the major corridors and in the region-wide funding. We're cleaning up our air by helping make sure that we can convert our region's buses to alternative fuels. We're improving the bus system, and we're planning for the future by helping local jurisdictions get the planning done today to help us invest in tomorrow's corridors tomorrow. Overall, these investments are going to result in more than $4 billion of construction on the investment corridors. That's going to create more than 37,000 jobs. And those jobs are family wage jobs, about an average of $98,000 a year. It's going to help families get back to work and make sure that they can realize the transportation investments that we're planning. I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about the investments that are happening specifically in Clackamas County. There's 5 key corridors here, and I know that Councilor Lewis and Chair Bernard can list them off the top of their head, but we're just going to walk through them quickly. The key corridors in Clackamas County are McLaughlin Boulevard, Highway 212/Sunrise, Highway 43, Clackamas to Columbia, and 82nd Avenue. On McLaughlin Boulevard, we're investing in safety to make sure that people can move around that corridor without being worried about being involved in a crash. We're investing in improved transit to help people move up and down that corridor, as well as future planning to look at, we heard a lot of interest from residents and businesses that they want to plan for a possible light rail line. So we will invest in planning to look at a light rail line extension. And we're going to invest in key sort of amenities along that street, like street lights, improved signals and signal upgrades, and bike lanes and crosswalks. On Sunrise Corridor / Highway 212, we're investing in a whole bunch of safety improvements for the people who are living there now and the incoming housing and residential developments that are planned, as well as significant planning for the Sunrise Corridor and other improvements to make sure that this continues to be a way for people to move from east to west around Clackamas County. Highway 43, I know Mayor Axelrod is participating tonight, and his team have been working so hard on this project. This is a key focus for the city of West Lynn, looking at safety and improvements in West Lynn on 43 to help people move up and down 43 and into West Lynn's downtown. The Clackamas to Columbia corridor is a key corridor where we're looking at building new sidewalks, improving the crossings, putting in transit signal priority, and dealing with some key bottlenecks. And then finally, 82nd Avenue, which extends all the way from the intersection at the airport down into Clackamas County. And it includes really important safety upgrades, some key path planning, some signal improvements and modernization, and then state of good repair investments to make sure that the roadway is well maintained and functional. This package was built and it's able to impact so much of the region because of a really collaborative planning process. And you can see some of your Clackamas County representatives here. This was at the December 2019 meeting of the task force. This was one of the first times that we've sat business leaders, community leaders, and elected officials at the same table to advise and help provide recommendations on regional transportation funding. They met for hundreds of hours all around the region to learn about what the needs are, what people want to see, and how we help as a region identify the key places that need investment. We also had local investment teams for each county that met to provide individual feedback. And our surveys and the outreach and conversations we did enabled us to talk to more than 25,000 people to learn what they wanted from their transportation system. And so that's really helped this measure be rooted in understanding what the key needs of the people that we all serve are and what they want to see in order for this region to be ready for the next 20 to 30 years of growth. So we are so excited to be considering putting this measure forward to the voters to talk about what our region needs to move forward. And let's invest in our future. Let's get shovels in the ground. Let's get people back to work. Let's get moving. With that, I'm here. Both Councillor Lewis and I are available to take questions. I know my colleague Andy Shaw is also, I think, in the audience and can take any questions if we need to bring him in. And I think we have a little while, Trent, so we can spend a little time on Q&A.
Yeah, before we hop into Q&A, I just want to add in a couple words about process. We are at council still scheduled for at least 3 more work sessions on this measure, most specifically to drill down into the programs, how all of this fits together with funding, and any kind of outstanding issues. So there is still opportunity as planned. Our target referral date is mid-July, and we have actually all the way into August for referral, though we don't want to be down at the deadline in the heat of it in August. So mid to late July is what we're shooting for at council.
Thank you, Tyler, for that. Could you please close the screen share so I can see hands that are not being used on like the raise hand feature? But it was Ed Gronke first, and then Councillor Morrison following are the first 2 hands up.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, you mentioned $4 billion. Is that the total cost of the project? Or what will be the total cost of the project?
So $4 billion is about what we will need to raise in order to build the projects on the corridors. But overall, this is leveraging about $1.5 billion in federal funding, as well as additional local funding from some of the other local governments. So it's about $7 billion worth of projects. For every dollar that we're investing in the region, we're bringing in 50 to 60 cents federally. So we are multiplying the amount of money we're bringing to the region by about 50%.
Well, Metro needs to raise $4 billion.
Yep.
How are you going to do it? What will the tax structure be?
Well, as Councillor Lewis just said, our council is going to make the final decision on that looking in June or July, but they are the revenue mechanisms that they've asked us to continue to look at include a vehicle registration fee and a business tax based on wages paid. So those, in order to do this work, we'll bond much of the funding. We would need to raise about $300 million a year, and those are the mechanisms that they're considering to look at that.
Second question, very quickly on McLaughlin. You mentioned installation of lights. I chaired the MAPIT committee for a number of years. We put in a whole lighting system on McLaughlin where ODOT told us the lighting was needed. Where are you going to install the extra lights on McLaughlin?
I would need to check in with our engineers to get the specific locations for you, but I can absolutely follow up. I know there were a whole bunch of locations based on the county's work and some of the city's work alongside McLaughlin where they still are identifying needs for lights. And we heard that from a lot of the community members, but I don't know exactly where the locations are.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Yeah, I just, first off, I want to thank you for the presentation. That was really nicely done and very well laid out. And I want to give a shout out both to Commissioner Savas and to Commissioner Bernard, because the work that they have done, I've watched this come together over the last 2 years as I joined this group. And it has just been amazing, the work that you guys have done along, Jim, with your staff. And a special shout out to Jamie and the amazing work that she's done. But I want to follow up on Ed's question, and that is, I don't see how you can wait until July to spring it upon the community how you're going to pay for it. And I think this question is really to Councilor Lewis. You've got to, there's going to take a lot of conversation and a lot of work to bring everybody together. And I think if you wait until July or August, you're not going to give us, those of us who strongly support this, by the way, and myself included, you need to give us a chance to sell this, not only to our community and to other elected leaders, but to the voters. And you're not going to give us enough time if you don't spring it, if you don't tell us how you're going to do it until July. And that's just, I could be wrong on that. And Christine Lewis, you and I'll leave it to the rest of you guys who've been around a lot longer than I have doing this. But we need to know how you're going to pay for it so we can help sell this.
Payroll tax is the mechanism that we're really focused in on. We may be able to add other, the vehicle registration fee is an essential piece in order to support annual programming funds. But in terms of how do we build $300 million a year using the authorities that we have, payroll tax is the clearest line. It's come to the top in the discussions we've had with our task force. And two, when you look at the chart of what authorities we have that we're not using or that we're not potentially maxed out, it's the one that's available.
Thank you.
So I had Mayor Holliday next, followed by Mayor Hodson.
So those of you who know me know I have a hard time expressing myself, but I'm really confused about how you expect to sell this in this economic time. It just seems to me like this should really get pushed off for at least a year. I don't see any possible way that you can ask the voters after whatever is going to happen with the homeless thing to go back into their pockets again during this time when, there's tons of people unemployed and businesses have been, killed. Explain to me what the rationale there is.
I think we're still in the position where we know that the needs aren't going away. They're going to get more expensive as we go. And the work that we're doing right now is trying to figure out, is this the right size of measure? And it's an ambitious measure for these economic times, particularly, yes, pointing to a payroll tax. But it's also a measure that is part of an economic recovery of investing in construction. And if we're investing in construction jobs, that jumpstarts regional growth in a way that other stimulus packages from other places may try to, but we can do it here ourselves.
Okay, well, I'm speaking for myself now, not as the city of Oregon City, but I'm not going to support this.
Okay.
Mayor Hodson, followed by Commissioner Savis.
Both of my questions were asked. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I'm not just going to be as honest about this as I can. I mean, when I just think about the constituents I have heard from in the county about where their traffic issues are, or what resonates with them, or what they just define as a bottleneck, what road, what highway, whatever it may be. These corridors aren't it in Clackamas County. I can't speak for Portland or Multnomah County, and I can't speak for Washington County, but these are not the bottlenecks, any of them that I have really heard of. I mean, granted, on the way to work on 99E in Portland, it backs up, but it's not backing up in Clackamas County. It's backing up along the 2-lane road, 2 lanes going north into Portland, which on McLaughlin in Multnomah County, just north of Tacoma. That's where it backs up. So I guess we have perhaps it's a weakness of mine, but I have a hard time selling something I don't believe in. And I think if the region is going to get behind the verbiage and the rationale for this measure, and we're using bottlenecks and we're using verbiage like getting people to work, We know where they're plugged up. We know where the bottleworks are. We know where the workforce is sitting on the way home. We can name those bottlenecks. They're just not these. So how do we straight face the public?
Well, the engagement that we had time and time again, we heard about these corridors, and the engagement that we had, granted, is limited to the folks within Metro. That's the constituency I serve. The work that we've done time and time again has pointed to these corridors. And at the beginning of the process, in addition to coming forward with the corridors that had the highest stats for fatalities and the highest stats for off-peak congestion, we said, community, bring forward corridors. What have we missed here? And all of those were considered by the task force more than a year ago as well. So we had that kind of dragnet of like, come up with where these investments need to go and these rows. And as you know, Highway 43, it didn't look as good with the statistics that engineers can put on a piece of paper, but community spoke loud and clear, and it rose as a tier 2, and it's now included in the project list. So I feel like these corridors really are representative of moving around the metro area.
Yeah, I guess I was referring to, thank you for that, Christine. The corridors I was referring to are the tier 1 corridors, and 43 is not, it's a tier 2 corridor. So I apologize for not making that clarification. But, you know, I suppose if the Sunrise would actually, the monies and the portion of Sunrise that is going to be funded by this actually helped and actually was completed, I mean, I could help straight face and argue that it would at least take care of help one corridor, that indeed that language becomes true. But right now that language is not true to me. I can't straight face the public and tell them that these are bottlenecks that are hindering people from getting to work, let alone getting home.
Well,
Commissioner Savas, I'll just say we're happy to share the data with you that the task force looked at and our council looked at as well. That does show that these are some of the key bottlenecks in Clackamas County. Sorry, Chair Bernard.
oh, I was just going to say that it's true, it does not build the Sunrise, but it does improve the future potential of the Sunrise in that it addresses many of the traffic issues and pedestrian issues around the Sunrise. So we started with a zero support of the Sunrise, literally zero support. And we're able to get it up to, I believe, 181 million, somewhere around there. No, it doesn't build the Sunrise, but it does make the future project easier to build and does provide lots of opportunity to address bike ped, safe crossing, intersection improvements on the current 212. I mean, I'd love to have seen the whole thing happen, but it was obvious that we did not have the support to move that forward. As far as McLaughlin Boulevard, this isn't all about roads. This is about safety, connectivity, future development of McLaughlin Boulevard with housing opportunities, business opportunities. There's a ton of opportunity on McLaughlin, probably more than any other boulevard in Clackamas County. So I support the package. I am challenged by how they're going to pay for it. We did argue against property taxes because we are already overburdened by property taxes. The agreement was not to go there. So we need to look at other ways to do that. But I haven't seen what the final decision is, and the Metro Council needs to make that a decision. And then we'll look at the package again and make sure Clackamas County gets its share.
I have Mayor Hodson raised up next, followed by Mr. Gronke.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to go back and revisit the employee payroll tax. What kind of an amount or percentage are we looking at in terms of what will be assessed on employees in the metro region.
Tyler, you've done the modeling. I haven't.
We are still in the process of figuring that out and taking into account the current economic situation to see what's feasible and what makes sense. So I really can't, that would require council direction. But it's, I would say, you know, we are working closely with the business community to have these conversations. And it's certainly not something that's going to get sprung on them in July or August. It's conversations that we've been having with them for over a year right now. And I think we're feeling comfortable about where it's going to end up.
So Tyler, can you give me a range of numbers that are being discussed?
I can say that it's definitely under 0.75%.
Okay, that at least is a starting point. My second question, going back to some of the conversation in the presentation about bus lines and things of that nature, how, when we talk about, is it, we're talking about adding bus service, are we talking about adding bus lines, more lines, more frequency of buses running along lines, expanded service area? What exactly are we talking about in that regards?
That's a great question. We are talking mostly, what we heard from the people we talked to is that their biggest frustration with buses was that they are too slow. They said, look, you know, it comes every half an hour. I'd like it to come more, but the real reason I don't take it is that it's an hour on the bus and it's 30 minutes for me to drive. And so we're really focusing on how we move buses more quickly so that they're a real option for people, so they're actually competitive with driving, and so that people are spending less time stuck in traffic. So we're mostly focused on moving buses more quickly. And then in places like the Clackamas to Columbia corridor, we're looking at making sure coming out of Happy Valley that that's well equipped to run transit at a point when they are ready to run bus lines on that corridor, and that they can just implement bus lines quickly. So we're really focused on how do we move buses quickly? How do we get them out of traffic? How do we make sure that they work for people?
Okay, thank you. And sorry, I'm going to go one more, and then Ed, it's all yours. So you talked about light rail running along I-5. What's the stretch? It's down to from ending in Bridgeport and starting where?
Starting in downtown Portland.
Okay, so again, to me, when I look at, I'm going to tie this into the whole bus conversation. So there's a method in my madness here, is that it's getting to those light rail stations.
Yep.
I know that we've seen pretty good success with the Milwaukee line, the Orange line, and I know that the conversation around there was that the parking structure wasn't big enough. So, I mean, are we looking at those kinds of pieces, number one? And number two is the biggest concern and pieces that I hear is getting people from outskirts of towns and cities where they cut bus service into the light rail line. So it's either add bus service out there, or you're going to be putting people in cars, which is what the Metro plan's kind of trying to alleviate from. So we got a little bit of a balance problem here, I think, and that's, I'm curious how that's all going to get planned out and worked out and factored into this cost projection.
That's a great question. And I should add that the McLaughlin corridor project does include increased park and ride capacity to help address some of those shortages that you talked about. And Tom, I will probably let Tom speak to the Southwest corridor, but they're doing a lot to make sure that it really is accessible and serves to carry people from that whole catchment area up and down the corridor. Tom?
It is. In fact, what it looks like is there will be a massive park and ride lot in Bridgeport. And making sure that it's in Bridgeport, all the modeling shows that that's where people will get off of I-5 and look at their cars there to get on. It's a 32-minute ride from Bridgeport to downtown, you know, pretty much guaranteed, which is pretty outstanding when you consider that it's, you know, 45 or 50 minutes from that same spot in your car stuck in I-5. So no, all the modeling is looking at numerous areas for additional park and ride lots, but there will be a big one right at Bridgeport. And the good thing is, we've already got a park and ride lot at Bridgeport. It's owned by ODOT, and we would put a structure there, a large structure. I can't remember the number of cars that would park there, but it's significant. It's just a real key spot.
Tom, right now it's 950 is what's scheduled there.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Ed Gronke, followed by Mayor Holliday, followed by Commissioner Savas. And then I see Mayor Swigert with his hand up. So after Commissioner Savas, Mayor.
Thank you, Trent. This is my second time around. I'll try to keep this very brief. I think it's a great project. I'm very impressed. It's a very ambitious project. My big concern, and here I agree with Dan Holliday, I don't normally agree with him very much, but on this I have to agree with him. I'm concerned about the cost. I don't know how many of you re-registered your cars this year. I did. I was surprised. My registration fee is a little over $200. I can afford an additional $30 or $60 vehicle registration fee, but I'm afraid in this particular year, it's going to be really, really difficult to get the voters to agree with this. I think it would make more sense to hold this off for another year.
I don't want to get in front of my council, and I will certainly, Councilor Lewis should follow up on this, but I will say I hear your concern and I appreciate it. I think we have a couple different factors here. It's important to remember that our state and our region have actually done the most transportation investments when we have been in times of recession. And it's because people recognize and believe that building transportation projects helps put people back to work and helps put our economy on a solid footing so that we can emerge stronger. It's also, we all work in the political realm. We're not going to put this on the ballot if it's not polling well. And so there's a lot of people across the region that really believe that transportation is important. We are seeing over and over again, people are more frustrated by our transportation system. They are willing to spend more for it to be better. And they want to know and feel confident that we are investing for the future. They're really worried about the growth that's happening, and they're really worried about what it means for them and their families in 10, 15, 20 years. And they're willing to pay for it. We're going to continue to test that and understand how they feel about all these things. But we are lucky in that we are drawing from across the region, Multnomah and Washington counties as well. And we have a lot of people and a lot of companies and a lot of businesses who really want to see these improvements happen. So
yeah, we've had engagement with task force and through a survey during our stay-at-home order. We've had the virtual meetings where we've actually heard folks say, yes, continue onward in your planning. That's not them saying, yes, for sure, we know this is the right time to go. But we'll know more in the next couple of months as phases of reopening happen. Do we have our legs under us or not? And so I'm not prepared to pull back now. We have to continue to plan for this. And we'll again, as Tyler said, have research that shows that we're not completely shooting the moon if we are going in November. I did want to, Chair Bernard had a comment earlier about Clackamas and its fair share. I did want to just put in perspective with the list of projects as currently developed, the Clackamas County project list adds up to 26% of the funds expended. If you pull out just the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project. That project goes along a seam. It serves all three counties. So if we pull out Southwest Corridor, 26% goes to Clackamas, and that's compared to 18% of the metro population that lives in this county. So right now we're punching a little bit above our weight class, and I'm going to continue to be a bully for that and bring Councilors Dirksen and Craddock along with me to make sure that we continue to get at least a quarter of the funds.
Thank you, Christine.
Mayor Holiday, I have you next.
Yeah, so I have a couple things. One, I have a very healthy distrust of TriMet. The numbers that they have put out for the light rail lines have consistently underperformed what they estimated or said that was going to happen. So when you tell me you're going to take a lane of I-5's traffic off the road on the Southwest Corridor Plan, you've never been right before, so why should I believe you now? More importantly, TriMet has its own budget, so why are we taking money out of this transportation plan to give TriMet more money when they have consistently underserved the outer communities of the region? Oregon City is just barely served by TriMet. Fortunately for Sandy and Canby, they've gotten out and have their own systems, which work pretty good. The other thing is, Metro seems to be confused all the time. They still haven't really laid out the plan that's on the ballot now. I mean, it's just barely a framework with no real idea about who's getting the money, how it's going to get spent, how it's going to get tracked. So between those two things, I just don't understand this. And that's it, I guess.
So I'll respond to some of that, and maybe Tom will want to respond, or maybe he'll want to just let me sit in the boiling water alone. In terms of Clackamas getting service from TriMet, I share your frustration, but until we have a complete system, it's hard for me to want to get on that bus that only comes once every hour. So it's a chicken and egg problem sometimes. But in terms of where we're going with making sure that we're making an investment in this local through a local measure, Southwest Corridor is going to be funded by the feds, hopefully with help from the state, and both of those funding mechanisms will be unlocked with a local commitment. So we've really got a big piece of the layer cake, but we're not putting this alone in perspective with Southwest Corridor. And in terms of,
the other problem is that even prior to this whole COVID thing, the numbers, the ridership numbers for TriMet have been going down consistently over the last 3 or 4 years. So why are we dumping more money into a failed system that is consistently losing riders because they don't like it?
Well, let me deal with that. Mayor Holiday, I'm happy to take your ideas back to my boss, general manager, and the board. But if you look at the numbers, we are actually, yeah, we're down about 0.5%, but when you look at it on a national level, other transit districts are down about 15%. And you'll see that for a number of reasons. The real theory is it has something to do with Uber and Lyft. But yep, it's down. The other stuff that you mentioned, our numbers have been pretty darn good. In fact, we've overall exceeded the numbers in the last 30 years for the projections that actually came out of Metro's forecasting. We've done very well. In fact, we've exceeded every other district in the United States. So I think you need to relook at those figures, and I appreciate your thoughts, and we'll carry forth, as I said, your ideas back to our board and our general manager. Thank you.
Thank you guys for keeping it interesting. Commissioner Savas is next, as well, and then followed by Mayor Swigert.
Yeah, this is probably best answered by Tom. Tom, you and I consider ourselves, I consider you a friend. This is not a hardball, so much as it is, just, I think, a good informational question that will kind of get towards a comment that was made earlier. What I have heard from the leadership at TriMet most recently in the last, actually for just over a year now, is that the likelihood of adding service or the willingness of TriMet to add service anywhere was predicated on having high density transportation oriented development. Otherwise, it really didn't pencil out. So how does Clackamas County, whether it's Oregon City or whether it is West Lynn or on Highway 43. I mean, how do areas like that ever get there?
Well, I think we're kind of, this region is at a turning point. When a community hits 3 million population, it's almost like there's a big significant shift. And I think you see a lot of new development going on, gangbusters in Clackamas County. And I think you're getting there. I think the high rise that I see being built, well, I don't know if it's considered a high rise, but the new developments that are going on in Milwaukee, for example, really demonstrate that that shift is happening. I mean, what a charming place. People want to move there. So you see high development transit in other places where they're just higher density, Multnomah County, Washington County now too, but it's coming to Washington, it's coming to Clackamas County as well.
Yeah, well, the purpose of my call, Tom, is to point out the areas where we need service, where we don't have service.
Right.
Not because Milwaukee has good service, 99 has good service. So I'm talking about areas where we need service, that we want new service. And I heard directly that not likely to happen.
Well, I think overall we are trying to increase all service to all areas. It's easier to serve places where there are a lot more people. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Okay. I only have one follow-up question. That's to Christine or Tyler, and that is, how many travel lanes will be removed in order to make way for the bus line improvements throughout the region?
Tyler.
In general, there's not a lot of removal of travel lanes. So there's specific intersection locations where we might turn a right lane into a bus only turn lane. And there's some future planning and some work on 82nd in the Multnomah County section where they're looking at how to speed up transit. But in general, the number would not be significant. I don't know, because a lot of those engineering details are still being figured out with the local jurisdictions, but it's only being done in areas where the local jurisdiction is supportive and wants to work with TriMet and with Metro to prioritize moving as many people as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
I have Mayor Swigert, followed by Mayor Axelrod, and then Martin Myers.
Okay, you said you've been talking with businesses all along. May I ask if that was corporations or small businesses, which make up 80% of our workforce?
So 1/3 of our table that we set task force members was from the business community, and they represented some of the biggies and corporations for sure. We also had a representative from a smaller chamber of commerce. And I've been in front of CCBA several times, and we've been working through the chamber structure as best we can to engage smaller folks who aren't at the big table.
Okay.
And I should say that part of the reason that I wasn't able to give a specific number to Mayor Hobson when he asked is, we are looking at figuring out how do you exempt smaller businesses from a potential payroll tax, and how do you do that efficiently, and how do you do that in ways that really differentiates between the smaller businesses in our region and the big folks. So we absolutely recognize that need.
Also, gosh, it's been so many people in front of me, I didn't get all my questions here. Just something to remember as you're doing this. And, you know, I don't have really a fight in the game, because nothing's coming out to Malala unless you're going to widen 213 or 211. Anyway, I would have everyone remember that the exodus from California came at higher taxes. You're only going to tax people so much before you're done, before they fight back, before they resist, before they move, before they leave. I don't want to see that happen to Oregon. And with that, I am muting.
Thank you.
Mayor Axelrod, you're next, followed by Mr. Myers.
So Interesting comments. I kind of want to remind us a little bit, if you step back and look at our regional area and our infrastructure and our transportation system, there's two kind of a little bit separate but connected elements we've talked about that need work. One is we have this broad system-wide regional network that we need vital help on. For example, we have a lot of people commuting from east to west through the metro, for example, like when thinking of a little bit of Clackamas County. And when you look at the plan here, none of this is really per se addressing the bigger picture regional transportation. Rather, this is, I see it more designed to improve and make those corridors more vital and livable, and address the safety issues and allow us to reduce the stress on our sprawling tendency, of moving out. So for example, 43, just as I could just take as a local example through West Lynn, part of the objective there of building a safe corridor is to help provide, other modes of transportation which are vitally needed. If we don't start building these bike lanes, we don't start building these other ways to get around, we're never going to have the option. We're never going to address our climate goals. We're never going to get progress in those areas that we're also very interested in seeing our system development address. But by investing in the corridor, we can rezone parts of the corridor and we can bring vitality and some density where, we don't have a choice of growth. We have nowhere else to go in West Lynn, but we can make that 43 corridor more vital and make it more, more interesting, bring in small businesses, make it so that people can live there and don't have to have a car. So if you recall, part of the objective as I see in this whole program, the 2020 plan, is to really help us bring people in, increase our safety, provide and allow other modes of transportation, and work on more of that kind of interior network. So I think that is, when this early was presented, and I think, Tyler, when you got jumped on about the bottlenecks thing, this isn't really the bottleneck solution. This isn't so much the bottleneck issue, and that was raised by Commissioner Savas. This is more the safety enhancement, improvement, livability. It does address a bottleneck in a sense of improving and providing alternative ways for us to get around within the city. But we have these big, broader bottleneck issues that we still need to address. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. And they're kind of a little bit two different things. So I just kind of want to remind everyone about that. And we've kind of had those discussions before. So in the marketing of this and taking it forward in whatever council moves, I think separating those discussions to some degree, it might be needed as a selling point. But it's also, I think, a real time now, as you say, during these downturns, particularly when we might be able to finally get something out of our federal government, to have programs and projects and approach, laid out, or we're never going to get anything. So let's lay it on the line and put it out there and, hopefully generate some excitement and interest and focus in rebuilding. So I try and look at it more, half full than half empty, I guess. But I do agree with the taxation issue. People are taxed to death. And I think we do need to make it user supported. So, that just needs to be sort of a cornerstone away from the property tax for sure.
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely hear the sensitivities around making sure that we have not only, the right size, but also the nexus. And when I really think through what we've done in this measure, like we might be #1 in the country in terms of a local region with a ready to go list if the feds do unlock any money, because we've put a 1.5 years of engineering work into what they're going to be looking for. Tyler might be able to highlight a little bit more about the regional role versus kind of where state has investment potential in that kind of regional infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think I mostly want to reaffirm what Mayor Axelrod said, which is we know that we in this region, we have a state system, we have a national system, we have our local roads, and then we have these sort of busier corridors that go between major places in our region. So I'll use Highway 43 since Mayor Axelrod brought it up, but it goes from Westland to Lake Oswego into downtown Portland. It shouldn't be the responsibility of just Westland. It shouldn't be the responsibility of just Lake Oswego. It shouldn't be the responsibility of just Clackamas County or Multnomah County. It serves to move people between all of those places. And one of the things that our council said when they asked us to think about this measure over 2 years ago, they said, look, the state plays a really important role and they are the lead in investing in our, the state and the feds should focus on our freeway system. We know we need them to invest there. We're gonna be partners going down to Salem. We're gonna be partners going to DC, asking for as much money to put into our freeway and highway system as possible. But we also know the state isn't gonna put a lot of money into 43. They're not gonna put a lot of money into Highway 212. They're not gonna put a lot of money into McLaughlin. And we can't expect our local cities or our counties to bear the hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars that are needed to make those roads work for the people and businesses that are there now. And so we as a region believe if we're going to ask the folks who live in this region to spend money, we need to focus on the places where we're the ones who are responsible and the state isn't the primary owner and primary person whose entity that's responsible, or the feds aren't the primary entity that's responsible. We need to take care of the places that no one else is taking care of. And that's really how these corridors were identified. So I think Mayor Axelrod's point is right on. We know there's still a need for other investments at the state and federal level, and we're gonna work to bring that money back to our region as much as possible. And we're also gonna make sure that we as a region are here to take care of those key regional connections that no one else is looking after.
Thank you. So I have Mr. Myers next, and Mayor Holliday just raised his hand after that. And just a quick note for our co-chairs, we have about 5 minutes left on this topic and sort of a roundtable to follow.
Real quick, just a shout out from the rural and unincorporated areas of Clackamas County. About half, maybe slightly less than half of the population of Clackamas County live out here. A lesser portion of that half, it resides within Metro, but it's a very large and significant number of the voters in Clackamas County. It is really hard to find much, if anything, in this package that will directly benefit them and address the concerns of the rural people. This is not a uniform opinion. Oak Grove and some of the close-in CPOs generally feel more favorable about it, especially Oak Grove, because they are so close to the Park Avenue end of the Orange Line. But it's hard to see any benefit out here. So my question for you is, I heard you speak a couple of times about up to or exceeding 25,000 people have responded and given you their input. I know that some of the people from my area have participated in that, perhaps some of the more saltier comments that you may have received on your online comment section. But I'm wondering what you have done to reach out to those voters, specifically the rural and unincorporated voters that have not come to you with their comments, but who are yet going to vote a yes or no on it. Have you done polling out in this area, and what has it shown? Thank you.
So our work and engagement has really been targeted on folks who live within the Metro District. And yes, I have been to the unincorporated areas within my district. And I know Councilor Craddock on the east side has some of those areas as well and has done engagements. And I think that the work that we've done is within our districts and not necessarily looking at the county as a whole outside of Metro, because we serve our constituencies. So to the extent that there are specific issues for folks in unincorporated areas, particularly with planning and with getting prioritized on county lists for projects, we've heard them and we've been advocating for them.
I would just quickly
So
add
no
too
polling? Is that right? Then no polling particularly?
We have done polling, and the polling is a sample of voters in the metro area who live within the metro district. So it will include a proportional number of people who live in unincorporated.
And what were the results of what you found?
The polls that we've had obviously are all from this economic time, and strong support for a measure, and the corridors that we've selected have been tested. Strong support for the corridor list. And when asked about price sensitivity, we're in the right ballpark, we think, again, pre-COVID. And when asked about mechanisms to pay, guess what doesn't pass? A sales tax. Guess what doesn't pass? More property taxes. Guess what there's some openness to? There is still an openness to vehicle registration fee, and there is some openness to payroll tax.
Anecdotally, what I've heard is that heads shake when it's mentioned that there's little or no new pavement, new roads in the package. That's what the rural unincorporated metro and non-metro areas are looking for. Can that polling data, what you have, can that be shared?
It's all public. We've done 3 public polls. They're all on Metro's webpage. You can read the questions and see our results.
Thank you very much.
So I'll just add that it's been a priority for our commissioners to make sure that updates about Get Moving 2020 have happened here at the C4 table, where there is some rural representation because of our commute shed. So where the metro boundary has sort of limited metro staff from moving in and out, our commissioners have wanted to make sure that this table at least had that opportunity for rural engagement. Mayor Holliday, I have as the last hand.
Okay, so it's clear to me after looking at this that Metro and Portland's war on cars continue. 90% of us in the region commute by car, and those numbers are not going down; they're going up. So it seems to me that less than a quarter of this money is actually being used to help folks in cars. And don't give me the line that the light rail line is going to take cars off the road or some of that. And all of this stuff about bike and ped doesn't help commuting or drivers at all.
So, I mean, this is a multimodal measure, and I do think your number's a little high. It's 84%, not 90, who commute by car, but you're onto something there. I'm a car reliant person myself most of the time. And the work that we've done has been engaging in what do each of these corridors need. And some of the safety projects are safety for people who are driving as well as out on their feet or on other wheels. So it's hard to classify exactly what percentage goes to car driving folk. And that's something that as we finalize the project list, we should definitely dig into. But I do think that we are serving folks who get around by all modes.
And I'll just flag that particularly in Clackamas County, there is a lot of new investments to help people move by vehicle and to increase connectivity. We're building a whole new road as part of the C2C project. So there's a fair amount in there. And you're right. What we heard from a lot of folks is that they want to make sure this system works better, and they recognize that we can't add a bunch more cars, and they want to be able to rely on transit. And so we're trying to meet that need, but we're also hearing from folks who are identifying needs and ways that they need to get around by vehicle, and we're trying to address trying to address as many issues as we can.
And to be honest, you know, I'm out here on a ledge when I have colleagues who represent different parts of this region who hear from constituents who say, you're spending a single dollar on concrete that's going on the ground for a car. Please don't. Please make this a transit only measure. And I have to square with them and say, no way, no how will my district vote for a transit only measure. So this is helpful dialogue, but it's very Clackamas County, and you can imagine what they're saying in Multnomah County, and they are saying it.
Yeah, we need to get on to the next issue, but Keith, you okay?
Spacebar, mute button.
I just had one quick question because I don't know the answer, and I'm not beating up on anybody, okay? I live out here in the boondocks, so we don't have TriMet out here. We have South Clackamas Transportation. Has TriMet, are they now or have they ever been profitable?
Well, I'll also let Tom answer that, but I will say as a public agency, profit is not their intention.
Oh, okay.
No, no. There is one profitable transit agency in the world, and that's Singapore.
Let's move. All right, Brian, you want to take over?
Sure can. So we'll move through. I guess next on the agenda here is jurisdiction and member updates. So you've got something you want to throw out on the table. Trent, do we have some parameters on what we mean by updates, or are we just looking for an open roundtable of conversation topics?
Yes, as many of you know, the world has changed in the last couple of months, and there are a lot of forums where a lot of people share information, and it seems like there's been some general agreement that there's never too many forums to share what's going on because things are happening literally every day. And so I think you can kind of keep it specific to COVID if you would like, but of course you're welcome to share other things. We have 15 minutes here and more than 15 jurisdictions, so I'd recommend keeping it tight. And co-chairs, this would be the moment in the meeting where I whisper in your ear. Just move across the boxes in either an alphabetical or numerical way here to make sure that everybody is heard.
Okay. So I'm going to go across what's on my screen here. Tom, anything from your end there? Okay. Thank you. Keith?
No, I think we've almost beat that to death if you're talking about COVID.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Who's next?
Let's see. Who's next? Tyler Frisbee, anything else that you want to add?
No, sir, but thank you.
Okay. Miss Teresa Koloff, anything from the land of LO?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. Mayor Axelrod.
I'm kind of COVIDed out, but I want to just take a moment and acknowledge Mark Lee Drake, who's been on C4 for something like 15 years now, and has stepped, I think, into the alternate role now, but just has been really integral and an important part of the C4 as I understand it. And I just want to thank him for his service and a little shout out for him, and I think we ought to just acknowledge him.
Mayor Axelrod, I appreciate that. You're always very in tune to those things, and I saw the email earlier today and totally wrote that down on a Post-it note that is not in front of me, so I appreciate that piece. Mark Lee's been a great contributor to this group for a long time, and has always been has been a very good statesman for this group and for the city of Happy Valley, and he will be missed, but I know that Brett will fill in and get caught up to speed here very quickly, and we'll expect him to do the same thing. So thank you, Russ, for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mayor Drinkwine.
Your mic's not on.
Anything, Sean?
No.
No? Okay. Mr. Sherman.
Well, thank you very much. And no, I can never replace Councilor Drake. I will do my best, though. Just a couple of quick COVID-19 updates from Happy Valley. We did form a business and recreation task force with the goal of providing information to our residents, kind of a one-stop shopping area to learn about which businesses are open, health activities, safe outdoor activities. We've had a lot of hits. We're at an exponentially greater number of people hitting our City of Happy Valley website on a year-over-year basis. So it's been very successful. I would suggest that any other cities that have the opportunity to do that, definitely do it. Also, the City Council approved an emergency small business grant program. We're providing 2 months of lease or rent payments for local businesses up to $7,500 a month. We had 49 businesses that applied and qualified for it. On our second round of funding, we were able to provide assistance to every single one of those businesses that applied. So, it's not meant to fix anything, obviously, but with PPP and EIDL off to a, shall we call it, a little bit of a rocky start, we just wanted to build a little bit of a bridge so that between that and PPP EIDL, that should give them 4 to 12 months of assistance. And whether it helps ultimately or not, it's not our judgment call. But if we can do a little bit, we're doing our part. So that's the update from Happy Valley. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Sherman. Appreciate it. Paul, you're on my screen, so I'm going to let you go.
Sure. Just a couple of things. That call.
Sorry, not yet, Commissioner. Thank you, sir.
Sorry. Were you going for Commissioner Savas?
No, I was going for you, Mr. Gornick. Go for it.
So as a sewer and water utility, we're in the middle of our budget season for our fiscal year starting July 1. And we anticipate some serious problems with our customers being able to pay their bills. We've ratcheted back the staff's proposed budget increase and rate increase, and are dedicating a portion of the rate increase, although the budget has not been adopted by our board yet, dedicating a portion of it to an emergency customer assistance plan. We've already had 2 large commercial customers indicate that they cannot pay their bill, and we anticipate over the next 4 months we bill half of our customers each month, and we suspect over the next 2 billing cycles for each half of our district that we'll find out just how much of a problem the ability to pay is. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Commissioner Lewis, anything else that you want to add to the conversation tonight? You were muted still, so.
You've heard plenty from me.
We can always hear more. It's okay. Thank you. Mr. Gronke, anything from you, sir?
I would just like to caution the entire assembly here that the coronavirus, COVID-19, has done a huge amount of damage to our economy. The numbers I saw today are an unemployment rate of more than 20%, which is going to affect every one of your jurisdictions, every one of your tax incomes, the income you expect to get from your taxpayers. And this is the reason I expressed so many worries about the ability of Metro to pass another measure this year. I think I don't think we realize yet just how badly the economy has been damaged.
Thank you for that, Ed. I appreciate that. You're right. We're moving into budget season for many of us here in the coming weeks, and I'm not real encouraged by the numbers that my finance department is telling me that we could almost expect to reduce numbers by. So we're trying to avoid draconian cuts to next year and with services and whatnot. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation and scary in some parts. So thank you for that. Councilor Heisey.
No, not really. We're starting our budget hearings on Saturday, so that's where my mind is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Meyer. You're good. Thank you, sir. Commissioner or Chair Bernard, I've got you on my screen. Do you have anything you want to say right now?
No, just thanks for your participation in the mayor and chair. This is my 7th meeting today on this wonderful system. My butt is sore, and I appreciate all the work. And Christine, I got to tell you that during the T2020, where you participated in every single event, went on every single tour, was above and beyond. So when are you due?
July 3rd. So I'll be taking a week or two off right before we refer this thing, which is not great, but I'll be there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully you get a July 4th baby.
That's my hope.
Very good. Councilor Morrison.
Yeah, a couple of things real quick. Tiger Tualatin School District held their first budget meeting yesterday, and as Ed pointed out, some severe pain. They're looking to cut 17% from their budget next year. The Meridian Park Hospital, they have a lot of PP&E, but the doctors that surround that area have no PP&E, and we've been working with a couple of different people. Rachel Puzak, representative from Westland and Tualatin, has been extremely helpful in trying to get some of those doctors some PP&E, and so we're very grateful for the work that she's been doing. And then on the grant side, City of Tualatin was able to give $250,000 in grants. Actually, sorry, $252,000 because Northwest Natural donated $2,000 to the fund. We had 142 businesses apply for a total of $1.3 million. So there clearly is a lot of pain in our community, and the state has now added $5 million in matching one-to-one funds, and we're now, our economic development officers is working with the state to try to figure out what the rules are to get another $250,000 out to businesses in our community that are clearly suffering.
Thank you for that, sir. I appreciate it. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just wanted to, COVID related, just wanted to mention that there's as we go forward, how the Zoom meetings might be effective or perhaps maybe less effective in certain settings and topics. So we had one thing queued up for work later this week, or not this week, but this year, and that is housing. I know we've had spent a lot of time on housing. And the other issue is that was presented to the Metro subcommittee was Metro's effort to take a really hard look at the South Station project about perhaps either expanding or splitting the operations there. And because that is really on the edge of, it's in Oregon City, it's on the edge of the rural area. It's heavily used. And I know a lot of people that, including myself, that often use it and then drive right across the street and go to Home Depot to load up. So it's there's a lot of commerce that happens there. And so as they look for expanding that and where they expand it, I thought it was something that the C4 group should at least get a good presentation on somewhere in the future, provided this forum is satisfactory and Metro is willing to do that. So that's all we want to say is that how we move forward with the Zoom environment, and if everyone's okay with keeping our annual agenda, if you will, including the retreat on board. Maybe Trent will speak to that later. And lastly, I'll close with this. I will also, as Chair Bernard stated, give kudos to Councilor Lewis. The fact that she's been very attentive and come to a number of our meetings and been heavily involved. It's just been refreshing to have you around and have you so ubiquitous in our county and with our issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Stemple.
Hello. Well, I wish we had more money for COVID, but we don't have deep pockets to give our businesses some grants. So instead, we offered a 50% utility break for everybody last month. And this month, in order to help our local businesses, for every $25 that you spend at a local business, we'll give you a $15 break on your utility bill, to a max of $45. So we're hoping that that's going to help some of our businesses that are suffering tremendously over this. I did want to say Markley's going to be missed. Welcome, Brett. It's wonderful that you're here. Markley was my mentor and an incredible resource, so he's going to be really missed. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pulliam.
Yeah, no real report. Everybody knows where I'm at on wanting to reopen and everything. everything. The only thing I would say and ask of anyone who's in any meeting on reopening, you know, I'm on Facebook and I see what people in my community are saying, and they saw two things with the governor's press conference today. They heard May 15th and they heard that we're opening. So that's just kind of you know, I know that's not what she said, but sometimes, as we all know as leaders, what's said and what's heard are many times two different things. And so when then people kind of get the dose of reality of what, you know, might actually be the actual timeline, you know, there might be a reaction to that. So, you know, just as leaders in our local communities, just kind of be aware of that and maybe communicate that up the line. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Got Garrett next to my screen, but I think your staff helping out Trent. Is that correct?
That is correct. I still have our two transit districts, as well as Mr. Ottman from Wilsonville. Since Mayor Knapp is not here, I think he would like to speak to Wilsonville's update when you're ready for it.
Okay. I've got Tom. Is it Tom Strader?
Strader, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that.
Thank you for asking. Nothing to report here.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And then do we have someone else from transit?
Just Tom.
Just Tom. All right. And then Mr. Ottenod.
Hey, Mark, you should be good to go if you want to unmute.
Mark, I can't hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you, Mark.
Must still be muted, although it doesn't say that you are. I'll give another try. Sorry, Mark, we're not hearing it. If you want to email me the update, I can share it with the group with an update email next week, if that's okay, for the sake of time.
Okay. Sorry, Mark. All right, thank you everyone for that. We'll move into updates and other business. The
Hang
June
on.
4th. Oh,
You missed Russ and myself.
I'm sorry. Dan, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So, one, as far as the Metro South transportation goes, while I haven't had a lengthy discussion with the commission, our goals to redevelop the north end of Oregon City would not be unhappy if the Metro South station moved somewhere else. That's a key piece of property to the gateway to Oregon City. So we certainly would support Metro moving that someplace else. And beyond that, I want to make a little prediction here. I think over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to start to see this COVID thing dramatically reduce itself. And I would encourage Commissioner Bernard and Commissioner Savas to pay close attention on a daily basis to the numbers to see if we can't later in the summer actually start having some of those events again. You know, we have 2 big events in September in downtown Oregon City, some in mid-July. It would be nice to get back to normal operations as soon as we can. And if the numbers suggest that, I think we should speed up rather than slow down the reopening of our economy. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. I appreciate that. Mayor Axelrod, I apologize for skipping over you. You're up, sir.
You didn't skip me. I think I mentioned earlier about Markley, but I just had one quick question about the treat. What is the assumption? Because there was some talk about the venue. Are we going to touch base on what are we going to do now that we're probably not meeting for our retreat yet? Are we, or what is the plan?
Thank you for that segue. I'm going to turn that over to Trent and let him walk us through that.
Very sad that we are had to cancel the retreat. Obviously, with the governor's order moving into July, I think we have now felt affirmed that canceling was the right decision, since our meeting was going to be in June. We would not have been able to meet with a group larger than 10 anyway. So we would have had some challenges with that particular timing. and we were sort of anticipating that. In addition, like a lot of the things that were on our agenda were sort of becoming not irrelevant, but just things that needed to be pushed back because of everyone's response to COVID-19. And so recognizing that, we were, made the hard decision to at least cancel the retreat for June. That's not to say that we can't have it again later this year. Chair Bernard and Commissioner Savage have both mentioned to me a desire to look at a retreat possibly later in this year if we do have a close to reopening situation, just to maybe help the motel or hotel resort as like a local stimulus opportunity where we could step into something like that. So we are open to ideas as things start to reopen and to do it appropriately, and if we have the right agenda for it. I haven't lost sight of the things that are on our agenda, and the one that's still pertinent is a discussion about the climate action plan at the county. And so I've worked with the executive committee to have that teed up for a June C4 meeting. So that'll be June 4 now. Remember, the retreat was going to be on 5th and 6th, but we're just go back to a normal schedule with meeting on June 4th. So right now we have teed up the the climate action plan discussion. Commissioner Savas has talked about the Metro South discussion, and then there's another issue on the transit development plan that the county's been working on in conjunction with our transit agencies. And so a few things that are going to be ripe for discussion in June. So we'll be able to keep moving forward with a lot of business. And then I will keep, it's my promise, dedication to you, I will keep an eye out on when it looks like it's feasible for us to be thinking about coming back together for a retreat or some sort of retreat hybrid that might happen later this year. And so options are open. The executive committee really wants to make sure that that's, something that we're keeping on the shelf in case we do move forward with something like that. But it obviously wasn't going to pan out with as big as our group is.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trent. Appreciate that update. JPAC and MPAC updates. Do we have anything from JPAC?
Well, Mayor Knapp's not here tonight, so I will tell you that the conversation has been around, in lieu of the lobbying trip to Washington, D.C., that JPAC's been trying to, or suggesting that the strategy be of the T2020 be the somewhat of the basis for presenting to our delegation and in DC to try to lobby that. And I guess there is certain requirements for federal money and processes and alignment with the RTP. And personally, my concern is that the RTP has, when we have historically had a proportion of all modes of transportation, for roads and so forth, and bike ped, and the T2020 measure's been, in my opinion, really a reverse of the proportionality as far as investments. And so to carry that forward to Washington, D.C. in light of the typical pre-COVID traffic congestion issues we have that are affecting commerce, I'm kind of concerned that would be adopted as the platform to lobby for and to push at Washington, D.C. and really leave some of our critical infrastructure needs I would say, somewhat high and dry. I'm kind of concerned about that. And that it would be less, because of the travel restrictions, it would be less travel by elected officials and perhaps more of a staff effort on both sides, both here locally and to the congressional staff and our senatorial staff as well. So that'll be decided at the next meeting, and I guess we'll talk about that at the C4 Metro Subcommittee to some degree. And that's where I'll leave that at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. MPAC update.
I think I'm the only one left on the call who is an MPAC member. We did not meet in May or April so far. There is a meeting scheduled for the end of May. We'll see if that actually survives. The one thing that I will point out is that the regional barometer tool, which we've had multiple presentations about, is now live, and it's you can just Google Metro Regional Barometer, and it is a huge database of information that is pretty well organized. And if you're finding yourself unable to sleep some night, it is a great rabbit hole to go down. You can learn stuff.
I guess the last MPAC meeting in May will be canceled as well in view of what the governor has said.
Yeah, unless there's a decision to move to Zoom. I know that some of the Metro meetings are happening on Zoom.
Okay, thank you both on that. Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation updates. I don't think we have anything. Commissioner Savas?
We have a meeting coming up. The executive committee met a couple days ago via a phone, and so we have an agenda coming up, and it's got a lot on there. We'll have the chair of the OTC will be speaking. They'll have quite a bit of session on the tolling efforts and some other things going around the state. As you can imagine, there's very little gas tax or very little gas being sold, so the gas tax revenues are down across the state. Should be as no surprise. And so I think that as we all look at our budgets, especially those relying on certain revenue streams that are in dire in jeopardy, that that'll be part of the discussion as far as priorities and what we really do in a much leaner situation. I am quite concerned, as we know we all are, but economically, quite concerned about where we stand and what it looks like. And the longer this goes on, the deeper and the more tragic it's going to be on our community. That'll be the topics for R1 Act.
Okay, I agree with the damage that's being inflicted for sure. So thank you. Any other business for the good of the order? If you've got something, raise your hand and we'll call on you. Seeing no hands going up. Trent, is there anything else that you need to address us on?
I don't think so. I would just add that with the retreat, the resort at the mountain was incredibly accommodating, incredibly understanding. We are, usually a weekend of business for them. And so we were mindful of that when we made the decision. I just want to just reassure everybody, they are still excited about hosting us in the future. And so the relationship there is also still really good. That would be my only addition.
Okay. Thank you for that. With that, folks, we're done this evening, right on the button at 8:30. So thank you all for tuning in tonight and being part of the conversation. Please stay safe, and we'll see you all soon.